Good morning, JD Parker, and welcome to day 8 of virtual learning. Today is Wednesday, April 8th, and we are continuing onward with our NF 2.4 standard, which is multiplying a whole number to a fraction or a whole number to a mixed number. And I saw this quote. It's actually hanging up in our classroom. I adore this quote. And this is by Vivian Green. And it says, "Life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass, it's about learning how to dance in the rain." And this simply means that, times are going to get hard, or sometimes you think that it's going to be impossible for you to complete something. But actually, that's when you push the hardest and you do what you have to do to accomplish your dreams. And yesterday's checkout question of the day was a worksheet page. If you have not sent that to me, you still need to send that to me. Also, um, I want to show you a few tips. Up here in the top of your document, you will see the word file and all that. Let me see if I can find one for you. It won't let me bring it up with the movie. Up here, there's the word file, but there's also a little arrow. There's an arrow that's like a circular arrow, and that means undo. Then there's an arrow going the other way right beside that. That means do again. So if you mess up on typing something, you can click the undo arrow and it'll erase your last thing you did. And you can keep clicking it and it'll take you all the way back to the beginning. However, if you go too far, you can click the redo and it'll fill it back in. That's a very handy thing to have. The yellow boxes that'll be around the answer spot is what you're supposed to fill in. And if you just double click it, it'll put the cursor there for you to type with. Okay, so here is the paper you had yesterday, and I am going to fill in the answers as we go. You can pause if you need to slow this down, but you are to write a fraction as a product. That means an answer to a multiplication question of a whole number and a unit fraction. Unit fraction means I have one in the numerator. So write the product as that. So we're going to leave our denominator the same because we're not going to change the denominator. It's 5/6. So if I break it to its smallest unit, it'll just be 1 out of 6. But I'm going to need that 5 times. So 5 times 1/6 is the same thing as 5/6. And the next one says 7/8. Well, we're going to use the unit fraction of 1/8, but I'm going to need 7 of them. Yesterday, I went over that this whole number is the same thing as a numerator because you can always put it over that 1, always. So it's still a numerator. And if I only have 1 to start with in my unit, I'm going to need to multiply that times 7 to get a full 7/8. And I'm going to switch to pen because this doesn't look very vivid to you guys, I'm sure. 3/5. So I'm going to use the fraction 1/5. And I need to get 3/5 when I'm done because we're going to find the product of that. So 1/5 is my unit. How many ones does it take to get to 3? It takes 3. 3 times 1/5 equals 3/5. For the next section, it says to list the 4 multiples of the unit fraction. They were sweet enough to break it all the way down to 1. Counting by 1 is very easy to do. Multiples means skip counting. So if you have 1/2, then the next one's going to be a 2, and we're just skip counting by whatever this number is. This number is a 1, so we're just going to count by 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're going to leave the denominator alone because skip counting is addition. And then 1/6, we're going to leave the denominator alone and we're just going to skip count by 1, which is 2, 3, 4, and a 5. Then going down to lesson 8.2, which I think was on a Wednesday of last week, list the next four multiples of the fraction. It is not in unit form. Now we're going to multiples, means skip counting. Now we're going to skip count by 3. Plus 3, plus 3, plus 3, plus 3. And they're all going to have the same denominator because it's like you're just adding 3. This is also what a number line would do if you were starting on 0, and each single one would be a plus 3/10. But again, you do not have to worry about the denominator when you are skip counting and doing addition. 7/12. Now we're going to skip count by 7. 7 plus 7 is 14. And that's 21 would be 3 sevens, 4 sevens, 28, and 5 sevens is 35. And we're going to leave them all over 12 because 12 is the denominator in this case. So what this looks like visually is you would have 12 pieces. Let's see if I can cut it pretty close to 12 pieces. Think of a clock when you hear 12, remember? And now we're going to count by 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then one more over there, 7. So how this looks visually is you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then count it again. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That's the second time I counted. The third time I counted, the fourth time, and the fifth time. They wanted the next 4 multiples, which means they gave you 1. So that means you're going to have a total of 5 plus this. So they're 1. Write the product as the product of a whole number and a unit fraction. So they have here, they showed you a visual. It is skip counting by 3, 6, and it's doing it 2 times. But now it wants it in a unit fraction. Unit fraction is going to have the 6th as the denominator. We need a whole number. And we have 1 as our numerator because it is a unit. So that's like saying it's right here. So I have 2 hops, but now I need to do something with this 3. I can't just forget he's there. I need to move him over to the whole side because, as I taught you yesterday, you could even flip these. Say 3 times 2, 6 is the same thing as 2 times 3, 6. But you could also send your 3 over. 3 times 2 is 6. So I need 6, 1, 6 would end up being 6 over 6. How that would look with the new hops is I would have 6 hops of 1, 6. I'm going to hop on the bottom. I'm going to hop by 1, 6, 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I still get the same answer. Now I'm going to change 2 eighths into a unit fraction, which is 1/8. And now I'm going to give the 2 over here to the 3 because these are your factors. And you know 2 times 3 is 6. So I'm going to need 6 of these eighths. So 6 times 1 equals 6 over 8. And this is what they got too. They did 3 hops at 2 eighths. 1, 2, 3. We're going to do 6 hops at 1/8 because that's what the unit fraction is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We end up at the same. When you are breaking these apart into the unit fraction, you're basically having 1/8. Let me set this up for you. Okay, so this shows me I have 3 rows of 2 eighths. 1, 2, 3. This shows me I'm now going to have 1/8 6 times. So it's just breaking it apart into a smaller unit to work with. Instead of working with 2, I'm now breaking it apart and working with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 3 times 2 still gives you 6 pieces, and 6 times 1 still gives you 6 pieces. Remember, the whole number is like a numerator, and you can just multiply straight across, and you do not need to worry about what the denominator is doing at the bottom if you're just doing the numerators. For this section, they just wanted us to find the sum, multiply. So 3 times 7, remember, this is a numerator. You can always put it over 1. 3 times 7 is 21 over 10. 5 times 4 is 20. And you have 8 times 1. 6 times a 4 is 24. And then that would have a 1, and that would be 12. Now, I did notice with this one, this is a correct answer, but it could have been reduced further down because 12, if you double 12, you get 24. If you cut 24 in half, you get 12. So this is telling me that I could have dropped 24 down inside the division box and saw that 12 times 2 is 24. So if you got this answer, great. If you got a 2 wholes, that's great too. Down here you have a 2 and a 3. Well, 2 times 3 is 6. And then 4 times 1 is 4. Over here, you have a 6 times a 3, which is 18. And you have your denominator is a 5 times a 1, which is 5. Remember, you're multiplying straight across. 7 times 2 is 14. 1 times 10 is 10. Write the product as a mixed number. Okay, so we're going to multiply and write it as a mixed number. Mixed number is a fraction and a whole together. So we'll have our whole with a fraction. So we have 8 times 4 is 32. And then 1 times 10 is 10. Now let's drop that down inside the box. And this becomes our divisor. 10 can jump inside the box and pull out 3 groups of 10 because 3 times 10 is 30, and we're left with 2 over. So that means this answer is going to be 3 wholes, and 2 is left over, and put it over your worker, tenths. So 32 tenths is the same thing as 3 wholes and 2 tenths. 5 times 3 is 15, and then 1 times 6 is 6. Let's divide that out and see what we can get. Well, 3 times 6, oh, that would be too much. I would bust with 18. I have to get as close to 15 as I can. 6 times 2 is 12, and I'm left with 3 left over. So I have 2 wholes. This is my whole. And then my remainder will be 3. 6. So 15/6 is the same thing as 2 wholes and 3/6. If you were to work backwards and say 6 times 2 plus 3, 6 times 2 is 12, 13, 14, 15. You can always flip it back. 2 times 3 and 1/3. There are 2 different ways you can do this. You could have done 2 times 3 and then 2 times a third. Or you could have said 3 times 3 plus 1. So let's do it the first way. 2 times 3 is 6 wholes. Now 2 times 1/3, well, 2 times 1 is 2/3. It's like distributing it out. Do that first, and then do that first, and add it back together. Or you could have said 3 times 3 is 9 plus 1 is 10. And you could have changed this 2 times 10/3. And you would have got 20/3. And then After you get 23rds, you drop that inside the box, and 3 times 7 would give me 21. That's a little bit too much. So 3 times 6 is 18 with 2 left over, and I would have got 6 wholes and 2 left over with my denominator as 3 still. And then 4 times 2 and 2/5. Well, 4 times 2, that's 8. And then 4 times 2 again would be 8/5. And you can add those together and you would get 8 and 8/5, which means you need to divide this out because it's already an improper top-heavy fraction. And you would end up getting 1 extra that you're going to add. So you'd end up getting 9 and 3/5. Or if you said 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 more is 12/5 times 4. 4 times 12 is 48. And then 5 times 1. And then you can now divide that out. 48/5 would be 48. 5 can go into 48. Well, 5 times 9 is 45, and I'm left with 3. So I still get 9 and 3 remaining with 5 as my denominator. So whichever way you prefer is fine. Let's do it this way. 8 times 1 plus 7 would be 15 over 8. And now we have times 5. 5 times 15. So 5 times 10 is 50. 55, 60, 65, 70, 75. So you have 75 over 8. And when you divide that out, 8 can go into 75. Let's see, 8 times 9 is 72, and you're left with 3 left over. So 9 and 3/8. If you wanted to do it the other way, you would have 5 times 1, which is 5 wholes. I ran out of room, my friends. I'm going to do it over here. 5 times 1, which is 5 wholes. And then you have 5 times 7/8. 5 times 7 is 35/8. Drop that down inside your division box. 8 can go into 35. Let's see, 8 times 4 is 32, and you're left with 3 remaining over. So you have 4 wholes and 3/8. And now you just have to add that back to 5, which would give you 9 and 3/8. This is the hardest it gets with the mixed numbers. And you are not having to learn these to mastery. This is just showing you basically what you're going to be mastering as you get older. In 5th grade, they're going to ask you to do a little bit more. This is just getting your feet wet with mixed numbers. The distributive property, you distribute out the 3 to each one here. That might be the easiest for you to do, unless you are good at taking the denominator, timesing it times the whole, and adding in the leftover numerator. Either strategy you want to do, you could even draw it out. You could draw 3 3/4 and draw that 3 times, and you will still get the same answer. You could even do a number line. That's going to get a little bit more tricky because you're going to have to skip count by 3 wholes and 3/4. What that would look like is your first mark on your number line would be 3 wholes and 3/4. Your second would actually be in the 7 range, because if you add 3/4 twice, you're going to get a bigger than a whole here, and you would also get a 3 and then a 3 plus a 1, which would be a 7.5. So you would end up having to skip count pretty far. But you're welcome to try that if that's what you like to do. So moving on, 3 times 3. Let's distribute out this 3 to each part. We're basically going to decompose this number so that we can say 3 wholes times 3 wholes. Well, 3 times 3 equals 9. Move it down a little bit. Now let's distribute out this 3 to this 3/4. 3 times 3/4. Well, 3 times 3 is 9/4. So the answer is going to be 9 wholes and 9/4. But this is also bigger than a whole. So you have to, fix this so that it is also a mixed number so we can add it to our whole. When you drop the 9 down inside the division box and you have 4 on the outside as your divisor, your worker, 4 is going to jump in the box and it can pull out 2 4s because 2 times 4 is 8 with 1 left over. So now you have a mixed number of 2 and a 4th and 9. When you add 2 and a 4th to 9, it looks like this. When you're adding, and we did this about a month ago, you have nothing here plus a 4th, which means you just get a 4th, and here you get an 11. So the answer to 3 3/4 is 11 and 1/4. Last 2 questions here. A shrub in Pam's backyard is about 1 3/8 feet tall. It's important. A small tree in her backyard is 7 times as tall as the shrub. About how tall is the tree? Well, the word about here is telling me I am going to estimate. So this is pretty close to a half, but they probably want you to round all the way back down. 3/8 looks like this. 1, 2, 3. So this is closer to 1 whole than it would be to 2 wholes. So if you were to round down, you would have ended up getting 7 because 7 times 1 is 3/8. If you were to estimate to the nearest half, you would have 7 times 1.5 now because 3/8 is super close to a half. And then 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. So this is the same thing as 7 and 3/2. 3 times 7 is 21/2. And you can leave it as that, but if you were to divide it out, you would get near the same answer, which is that feet tall. Okay. A puppy weighs 9/10 of a pound. That's pretty close to a whole pound. Its mother weighs 8 times as much. How much does the mother weigh? So the mother is 8 times her puppy, which is 9/10 is a pound. You're going to take your whole, multiply it times the numerator because the whole is like a numerator, and you'll get 72/10 pounds. If you wanted to divide that out into a mixed number, you would get 7 wholes because 7 times 10 is 70 with 2 left over. You get 7 wholes and 2/10 pound. It's a small dog. Must be like a chihuahua or something. All right, my friends. Um, the estimation I know is a little bit further off because this would end up being 10 and a half when you divide that out, and this is 7, but it used the word about. So anywhere in between there would be a good estimate. Um, Tomorrow you have another paper you're going to complete. Make sure you send that to me. Do the best you can. If you don't know, it's okay. You are not learning this standard to full mastery. However, you should be able to multiply a fraction times a whole number. I know the mixed number is a little bit more challenging because it requires additional steps to either turn it into a fraction or to bring it back out into mixed number form. So I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and there is your review paper. Thanks. Bye.